And it is on this day, February 12th, 2023, that I finished Leviathan Falls by James S.A. Corey, the last book of the Expanse. It's done. It's over. There are short stories and interludes and all kinds of things, but in terms of the main series, this is how it ends. Before we even get into the book, I just want to say what a journey. I love this series, like, period. I have loved it a lot. I don't know if I'll watch the show, but I love the books. I am already half tempted to start just, like, skipping to some favorite bits, some favorite scenes. I'm not gonna do it, but I am definitely tempted. I have some very memorable moments of the series, and I have some very memorable reactions I've had to parts of the series. I wish I recorded some of them. Once I almost did, but I didn't do it because of reasons. But there were some great moments, some great reactions. One of them was while I was on the tram too, like on the tram, just pretty much by myself, but not quite, and just someone watching me like freak out silently, screaming at my phone. Yeah. Fantastic series. I love it so much. And I'm really glad I read it. I was a little scared about the commitment of 9 series, and people said that the books go by fast. They weren't wrong. They really do. All of the stops I had were just caused by myself. So they do go much faster than they look. And you may think you have an inkling on what the series is going to be like after the first 2 books, maybe 3 books. You're wrong. I could not have predicted the rest of the series from books 1, 2, and 3. Even though there are little hints all the way through. Could not have predicted it, and I just love the outcome. I love the format. I love how it's written. Thank you for writing such a fantastic series. James S.A. Corey, the 2 authors that worked on the series. With all of that said, we get into non-spoilers for Leviathan Falls. Now, I want you to pay attention to everything I just said about it being a fantastic series and how much I love it. When I say this isn't my favorite, and that's fine. I think part of the weight of this being the last book is that I'm going to be more, critical of how everything gets wrapped up. And I knew that reading it too. I think I was only like a third of it in when I was like, oh, yeah. Like, it's such a hard task, I think, to complete this series. I could not imagine having to think it through and come up with what they did. And I definitely love a lot of elements of what they did. It just doesn't compare to all the hype of all the other books. And that's fine. It doesn't need to. There's so much intensity and weight in this book. There's a lot of spread in this book, I think, it's spread. And then at the end, it's like very focused intensity. It's not spread out anymore. No idea how it was going to end. Coming into the book, I had like not a clue of what they were going to do. So that definitely gave it an air of mystery. And we continue to meet new people in as far as this book. And I definitely like those elements, and they had me on my toes a few times. And they brought back a character I love a lot. However, with all of that said, it's just some of the plots, it felt like it's not that it was resolved too fast. That's not it. It's as if it needed to be resolved in a different time frame. I don't think that makes sense, but what they did worked, and it functions, and it adds to the intensity. However, it's just not what I would have looked for, I suppose. It makes sense to the situation and all that, which is why it's great. It's just wouldn't be what my preference would be regarding how everything comes together. So, it's not my favorite. It's not a bad book. by any means. I read it in a few days, so it's not a bad book. It's a good book. It's just not my favorite out of them. I think the last book is one of my favorites out of them because it's just how everything intertwines in it. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's perfect. I do love Persepolis Rising. I love Nemesis games. I love Cibola Burn. Like, those are probably my favorites. Leviathan Wakes might be one of my favorites just on account of it being the first book, and the amount of nostalgia that book would hold now is insane. So that one may be it. And those are a lot of my favorite books, especially the style they're in, the surprises, the suspense, the oh shit moments are very amplified in those. This one, it's very amplified in the this is it, you don't know how it's going to go down, and here are some themes that are coming up while it's going down. And I like that those themes came up, because they are very important things to talk about, but just the fact that they're talking about it in the circumstances they are, it's both a good theme and a, like, is this necessary theme at the same time. So I have mixed feelings, and I think that's my overall thing. All the things that I'm not entirely sure about with this book are mixed feelings. They're not bad feelings. They're feelings. They're like interesting feelings. So it was great though. I really love the end. Like not the end, but like the last 10 chapters. Yes. Yes, very yes. And some of the moments in between, also very yes. There was some intensity, and there was some of that playing off of the perspectives of the last book. But it just wasn't to the same level as the last book. So I was expecting that, and then it turned out to not be that. So I think that's one of the things that threw me off. I love this book, though. It was good. I think that's most of what I have to say in non-spoilers. I can't really get into characters and stuff without it being spoilers. So I think my overall review is, for last book, it does end the series, for sure. And I appreciate it. It was good. It was enjoyable. Just when I compare it to the other books, not my favorite. But definitely worth reading. Like, if you make it a book 8, you're going to read book 9. Like, you're crazy if you don't. So, just do it. Maybe you'll see what I mean. With all that said, we'll get into spoilers. Now, I don't have that many spoilers. I probably should say at least one more thing. I guess not. Well, okay, I'll say one more thing, non-spoilers. One of the other things is that one of the characters in this book I hate. And I think that also may have played with my opinion. You're supposed to hate the character. You are meant to hate the character. But I have a level of attachment to characters where if I hate a character, it will make me grumpy. So there's a character in this that I hated. So there may be a little bit of grumpiness because of that, and that may also play into it. And spoilers will talk specifically about who that is and how painful they are to my soul. Okay. With all of that said, spoilers. I don't have tea anymore, so I can't sip my tea. We can pretend. Do the finger. Okay. Alright. Spoilers. There's a line towards the end that a certain person says. I think Holden says it, but it's a reply to a certain person. That says, a species of beautiful idiots. And that's the theme of the whole series right there. That's it. Like, that is the theme. We are a species of beautiful idiots. It's not worth becoming non-human. It is not worth us superseding humanity. It's not worth us forgetting about all of our flaws. However, well, not however, but it's not worth all of that. Like, those are the things that make us human. And while it makes us terrible humans, and it makes us fight wars and abuse our children and all the shit and terrible things we do, while we do all of those things, getting rid of those things we do just makes us not human, and that's also, it's not us, it's wrong. And that is the conclusion Holden runs into at the end of the series. And he still, after all the things he's been through in 9 books, truly believes that there are good actions that come from every negative action you see on the news. Like, while these wars and like terrible things are happening and people are just being bad people, he believes that there's hundreds of like good positive interactions happening in the background, and that is worth believing in and supporting for and fighting in these for. And yeah, I mean, the end of the book, he sees himself as like, if he can give himself and like save these people just so they can be human and try to meander their way through the universe, then may they do so. Interestingly, we end the series with, is it 36? I don't actually remember the number, but we end the series with a lot of different solar systems having a chance of regrowing in their own environment, their own way. And who knows how those end up. Epilogue. Ken Ingles. I wonder how old Amos is. He's probably really old at the end of this. Because he's immortal, isn't he? Well, not immortal, but like lives forever. Interesting. The Linguist. 31 days. I'm looking for the number. I don't see how many it is, but there's a bunch more universes, a bunch more worlds, and they all get to start new on their own. And I think that's what's happening in the epilogue, is one of the other worlds hit the world that Amos is in and came to Amos's system to like check up on another solar system and see, oh, are they alive, and just update with that part of humanity as well. That's probably why the last chapters in the linguist's perspective is to show that the people they sent to the nearest solar system or whatever like had a translator to be able to talk to whoever was in that system at that time. And Amos happens to be there, taking care. And Amos is the character that will live a long time, as I found out a few seconds ago. So it makes sense. And that leads us to talking about who lived, who died, who tells their story. I'm sorry for the Hamilton reference, but who lives? In the end, it's technically Alex and Naomi and Amos. Technically. And that's it. But also, Amos is kind of dead alive. Alex separates from the crew to go be a godfather to his son, or a grandfather, not godfather, a grandfather to his son's son, and be there for his family. And Naomi goes with Amos to the system and presumably passes away of age before Amos does. And pretty much everyone scatters at the end, which is kind of what I expected, but it's interesting. It's interesting how at the very end the characters are like, we've lost our people, and how important it was when they lost Bobby, and when they thought they lost Amos, and when they lost Clarissa. Like, those were such like big key moments, and it really affected the crew all those times. And when Holden sacrifices himself at the end of this book, Naomi finds that she can live with it, and she's okay with it, and so she goes with Amos and lives out the rest of her life doing whatever she does. And yeah, I was expecting either all of the crew to die or like all of the main characters to live. I honestly was holding out hope that Holden would live for quite a while, like even a little bit after he stabbed himself with the promolecule, which is pretty insane. I was still holding out a little bit of hope for Holden, but no, he's beyond gone. He's next level gone. Yep. Rip. Now, one main character did come back in the last book, and it was my man Miller. Now, I want to point out that I called it, and I predicted it, and I said, I bet Miller will come back, even though Miller's technically, like, gone. He came back, and I love him. Like, he's not a good person. He wasn't a good character, per se, in Leviathan Wakes. Like, he was amazingly well written, but he wasn't a likable character. He wasn't a character I would have said is, like, my favorite character. I liked him. I enjoyed him. And then he comes back as the ghost. The Firefly, we'll say. Comes back with all the fireflies, and I was like, ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. And then he goes away in book 4. He's back in this book, and he's hilarious. Like, he's just peak entertainment. As Holden is, like, going through, getting infected by the proto-molecule, trying to save the day, watching Duarte get murdered. It's comical, and I love him so much. He was a great character. 1 second. And just fantastic. The fact that Holden's constantly like, help me out here, and all that. Everything, the whole Holden sequence, as soon as he infects himself with the proto-molecule to when he's trying to hold everything together, that whole sequence is probably my favorite part of the book, period. Like, period. No other comments between, again, Miller being back and having all of his commentary, Tanaka being fucking insane and crazy, and we'll talk more about Tanaka, and just Teresa, like, having to hug Teresa and, like, hold her there after she saw what she saw is pretty intense and insane. And the authors gave you hope that Duarte would listen or something like that just because Teresa was there. But it turns out Teresa being there really didn't mean anything. It was kind of just a bait for the reader. And I really appreciate how they did that, because I totally thought, like, Teresa's here for a reason, right? But no, she just lives with quite the trauma after that, which sucks. It is unfortunate. But may humanity thrive in the worlds it goes to. I'm sure that the worlds with, again, we know that Amos meets the linguist, so yeah, but I'm sure the worlds with Elvia Koya are probably, like, thriving. And Soul hopefully thriving. Hopefully Earth has had enough time to recover by this point. Oof, poor Earth. Poor, everywhere, honestly. But yeah, that whole sequence, fantastic. My other favorite sequence was when Tanaka was at the school and there was, like, a sniping, it wasn't a sniping group, I'm going to call it a sniping group, up on the roof, and, like, it was just Holden and Amos and Teresa just all there, like, frick, and, like, trying to determine what to do, and they get surrounded by a bunch of people in, like, full armor and are trying to, like, melee with Amos and Holden. And then they get shot by the PDC fire in the atmosphere, so it's, like, really loud and it, like, deafens everybody. And then Tanaka shoots Amos, and we have that second of, is Amos dead a second time? Like, what? And then they're trying to, like, get onto the ship, and Tanaka is about to shoot Holden, but, like, Holden shoots her through the cheek, which I didn't realize what got her for quite some time. But yeah, that whole sequence, fantastic, had me on my toes. I was like, oh my god, are they really gonna kill Teresa, or is it gonna attack Teresa? Like, is Tanaka gonna win? I had no idea. Tanaka was such an unpredictable character, and that segues into talking about Tanaka. I hate her. I mean, you're meant to not like her. And I think the weird thing about the plot, which makes it human and makes it normal and makes it like a real story, is that our opinion of Tanaka gets so jarred and screwed. Like, we meet her, and right off the bat, I think from meeting her, you're like, oh, she's kind of an asshole. She's kind of has her background and stuff and her opinions on things, right? And there's definitely some of the things she does are definitely okay things in their own capacity, I suppose. However, the way she was doing it, no, and no. And just the why she was doing it and how she thinks about it and all of that, you can just get the vibe that she isn't great with people and probably wouldn't make great decisions when it comes to people. So we go from there, we start navigating, she gets this secret assignment, she has her hunting scene where she just decides to murder some things for fun, because hunting. Finds out Duarte left in a ship that she can't keep track of. Leaves and is like, I'm gonna find Teresa as bait. Goes to fight Teresa. She decides that the reason why she lost Teresa was because she wasn't willing to risk shooting her. So then she's like, lesson learned, risk shooting the kid. And then she goes and she slaughters a whole station of people, blah 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 blah. She does a lot of morally questionable things, beyond morally wrong things. I don't even have to say questionable. She does morally wrong things, and she does it for the wrong reasons, and we can hear that she enjoys it and is like loves killing people, right? And through all of this, we're like, okay, well, yeah, that like Holden and them are not going to be able to get away from Tanaka. Tanaka's going to betray them or try to kill them, even if they were working on the same side. And that was my conclusion. And then we have the whole sequence of Tanaka like going to therapy and like reflecting on her past and like having the people in her mind. And she sounds different through all of that. Like her voice, how she thinks and all of that changes. And while she's still focused on her secrets and the fact that she like went across like subordination boundaries and whatever, if you like, even ignoring that, she just sounded different. And I thought like, oh, maybe she's figuring it out, maybe she's like putting it together, like what her perspective is, and the fact that Laconia doesn't exist like kind of makes her perspective not matter. And she kind of said that, but it didn't affect her. It's still, she had something personal against Holden in the group. So despite like that dip in her character that made me wonder, like, is she gonna change? Is she gonna be rounded? She really didn't. She just went back to what she was. That's what confused me. That's what makes me a little like extra torn on how the character's written. It makes it human. It makes it like accurate to some people. Some people probably are like that. But I was just confused where it was going for the story, and it turns out that pretty much that whole sequence was just about getting medication for the brain thing. So shrug. But she goes back, reversed her old self, and is like, I'm angry and I want to kill Holden. And the entire sequence that they're going through the massive blue station ball, you can feel the tension of Tanaka wanting to kill Holden, and I'm spent the whole sequence waiting for Tanaka to do it, and Teresa then have to take action. So, yeah, Teresa was like bait in that way as well. Like if Holden died, then Teresa would have had to do something or something like that. And that's just, there was definitely a lot of stress there between Holden and Tanaka trying to figure it out. But instead, Tanaka dies killing Duarte by squeezing his heart out, which is a pretty terrible way to watch your father die. I'm sorry, Teresa. But, yeah. I think Tanaka's such a hateable character, and a lot of the book, I just hated being in Tanaka's perspective. It wasn't enjoyable for me, and it was hard for me to pay attention to it, because just, I didn't like, you know, reading that. So, yeah, but the sequence, like, Holden's perspective, and then her perspective with this, like, school scene, fantastic. A lot of the other things, though, I just wasn't as intrigued or wasn't as like devoted to reading it, if that makes sense. And the other thing, the last thing, my last complaint, it's not like a heavy complaint, but we'll call them complaints. The last thing that I also wasn't really invested in reading was the dreamer scenes. I understand the idea, and it's showing that Elvie's like working with all these metaphors and things. It's working with how humans can like understand things that aren't human, or our universe or whatever. I can appreciate all of that. It's just so hard for me to read and understand the dreamer sequences because they're written in a way that is harder to read and understand, that I would lose my footing when I was reading it. Like it's just stumble my like thought process. I'm not really able to follow any of it until Elvie explains it. So it makes those bits feel longer, and again, it like ruins my reading pattern. And that's just a me thing, 100% fine. I do appreciate the interludes and stuff like that in the other books. Just specifically in this one, there's a lot of those with the dreamers. and it's such a complex thing for me to understand. I wonder if there's like a short story that like dives into it or something like that. But it's just one of those things that I don't understand, and I wouldn't say I even have the energy to want to understand it. But here's an example. It's like Interlude, The Dreamer. And they're usually like 1 to 2 to 3 pages. So this one's 3 pages. 2.5. They're just so complex. I like that scene though when Amos wakes up from, what was her name? From Kara being in a dream. And also Kara having like withdrawals and like punching Amos for it and all that stuff. Because morals, you gotta bring in morals. Another good theme about scientific morals, what you can test on, what's wrong to test on, and the things we've already done as humanity that really weren't moralistic, but we use anyway. That was completely off topic. My brain's a little scattered today. I should have warned that at the beginning of the video. Rewinding. Those sequences and the lighthouse and the keeper sequence, I actually don't understand what that meant. Like lighthouse and the keeper as the title of the chapter. I wondered if it meant like Duarte and the station. If like Duarte's the keeper and like the station's like the lighthouse. I have no idea. I haven't been able to put it together. But that whole sequence is just jumping to like 6 different perspectives. And then Kit's son starts to go like all molecule-y. And that was freaky. I had a second of like, oh my god, they're gonna kill Kit and Kit's son. Out of all the people transiting at the time, but turned out they got saved by Duarte. Before Duarte started going crazy and being like, it's time to combine minds, make a hive mind, which, yeah, sounds pretty terrible. I knew as soon as I heard that, I was like, ooh, no thank you, no thank you, no, don't need that, thank you. So yeah, I think Tanaka's background fits the hive mind thing like very well. Like I think they were meant to be like counterintuitive, like not counterintuitive, but like opposites to like explain how important it is as a character. I can see that piece like being very important. It's just I hate Tanaka too much. But yeah, we're gonna do a moment of silence for Miller and Holden and Bobby and Clarissa and, is that everyone? Not Amos, not Alex, not Naomi. Might as well just do everybody. A moment of silence for everybody that died in this series because there are some awesome characters. Aversarla, she was great too. There's some great characters and I love them. So just take some time to respect those characters because they were fantastic. And they weren't all good people. Most of them weren't good people in some capacity or another. But they also weren't bad people. And this is very entertaining and I love them so much. I think that's everything I had to mention. Not Kit's son, Tanaka therapy. Yeah. I will say one more thing. No, the other reason why I don't like Tanaka is some of the things that came up with Tanaka's like background rung some bells, we'll say. I may have had some limited similarities or have friends with limited similarities to her situation. That also makes it personal in a way, which makes me also hate it more because it hits close to home. So I probably should have also included that when I say I don't like Tanaka. Yeah. It hits a little close to home, and that's a lot of why, but regardless, Miller came back. There were a lot of fantastic bits. I think it was like this section, it's about here. I would say this section and like the whole end sequence were really, really fantastic, and then a lot of those in-between bits is a lot of like navigating the story and the plot and the setup for the end. And it takes mental energy to get there, I think is what I'm gonna go with. not my favorite book, but this is one of my favorite series I've read. I mean, there's very few series I've read that haven't gone onto my favorite series list, but this is definitely on there. Fantastic series. I love it so much. I'm actually kind of not prepared for it to be over, but it is over. It just hasn't hit yet that it's over. There's no more. But it's done. We've read all 9. This is how it ends. I love that it just says that like right on top. Also, Duarte getting up freaked me out. I probably should have said that, but yep, here we go. It's over. It's done. The series is complete. And I'll try not to reread it too soon. I'll try. With that said, we get into what's new and what is next. That's a good question. See, we are between a few books when it comes to what is next. I don't have anything new. We can just say that now. But I have a few options. You see me just yanking off my bookshelf really quick. All right, so we have a few options when it comes to what's next. Now, generally, I want to do, I'm sorry, books, they're all falling over. Generally, I want to do a standalone after The Expanse and before I start my next series, and we'll talk about what the next series is. One of my first options is this book that I just bought recently because I know nothing about it and it looks shortish and like something I could dive into. So, playing with maybe reading this. I don't know anything about it, but maybe. I really like the cover. I think it's gorgeous. So playing with that, playing with reading a Neil Gaiman book, so maybe Neverwhere, or maybe Good Omens if I can get my hands on it. So those are some options. Or if I'm willing to get close to the series I'm next reading, I can read Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. And I think no matter what, I think I have to read some Arcanium Unbounded stories. So this is going to happen, period. But we'll find a standalone to read. I'll pick one. I may read like the prologue of each one, if they all have prologues. I may read the prologue of each one and like see which one I'm vibing with the most. Part of me likes the idea of reading Brandon Sanderson before I read more Brandon Sanderson, but part of me also wants to read something not Brando before I read Brando, so it can go either way. I'll choose some short story. It may be Good Omens. It may be something else. One of my friends is trying to recommend me Cersei, and I'm actually thinking about it. So the possibilities out there. There are possibilities. But whatever it is, I will read it. I'll start it. I'll update y'all when I finish it. And then it's Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. The biggest series I would have ever read and the biggest books I would have ever read, period. I'm scared, to be honest. But from all accounts I know, I will probably love this series. Like a lot. Like I'll love it. I just don't know how fast I'll be able to read it. I have no absolute clue. Because they are big books. They're big books. This is the same book. This is part 2, and this is part 1. Like, it's one book that had to be split into parts to be printed. And, I mean, that's a sign. So, I've decided that I would only do a book review every 2 I finish. So, every full book. So, I won't be doing a book review when I finish this. I'll be doing a book review when I finish both of these. So again, it'll be some time. I'm a little worried about, again, how big the series is, because it's humongous. It's a little intimidating. It's why I haven't read it yet. It's because it's an intimidating series. But I do trust in Brandon Sanderson. He's a fantastic author. So we shall see. Soon. But yeah, I will find the standalone I'll read. You can probably check on Goodreads whenever Goodreads stops editing its website. Goodreads is actually a terrible website. I just want to include that in my analysis here. But whenever Goodreads is done updating, you can probably check Goodreads and see what book I chose. I generally try to keep it updated, though it didn't let me update Leviathan Falls because the website was updating. But yeah, with all of that said, sorry, I'm putting all my books away while I'm talking. The Expanse, I have finished it. If I watch the TV show, I'll also update y'all on doing that in my next video, or maybe in a short, since it's book related, but not like exactly. If I watch it, don't even know if I will. So look out for that, and look out for whatever standalone I'm reading. And soon, we start Stormlight. Tee-hee-hee-hee. I guess there's one last thing I forgot to say. Expanse short stories. I don't plan to dive into them, but I may run into some along the way. I'll also update on that if I do end up reading some of the short stories. I think that's something I'll save for a year from now when I'm doing my reread and I want more characters or more plot or something like that. Then I may read one of the short stories. There's a lot of them. I think there's a lot. I'm not going to try to guess, but I know there's like more than 5. So we may wait a year before we read those. Now we've said everything. Thank you all for watching. I'm sorry if this one was like a little not put together, but The Expanse. It still hasn't hit that I finished it. Like, I'm waiting for it to process, but it hasn't yet. All hail, though. Fantastic series. Mwah. I'm very happy. I'm very happy I read this. That's how I'm going to end it. I'm very happy I read the series. Thank you, the internet, for recommending this series to me. 100% worth the time. Go read it. It's fantastic. It really is. It's fantastic. You just may need to mentally prepare yourself, and it is a commitment. It is 9 books. But for me, aside from outside influences, i.e. a concussion, some of them started going really fast. And if you are an audiobooker, you can audiobook these. Woohoo! Alright, so happy reading if you do choose to pick up the series, and I will have a series review 1 year from now that will more amply summarize what I think of the full series and how much the series lasts on me with time, because I just read it fresh, and while it is fantastic fresh, I'm also curious, will it be great to me in the future as well. See y'all soon. Bye-bye.